Okay, when should you use carbon-plated shoes? It's without question that carbon-plated shoes are gonna make you a faster runner. Whether you're running a 5K or whether you're running a marathon, you're going to be faster. But when should you use them and what are the benefits? Now, I've been running competitively for nearly 15 years, but I went from not being able to run 400 meters to very quickly, within a few years, representing my country at both the marathon and the ultra marathon. And the birth of carbon-plated shoes made me even faster. Now, I got this great question from Patrick in the comments. What do you think about using carbon-plated shoes in training? I usually prefer to use normal shoes as I find I have to work harder, but wondering what your approach is. Now, it's a great question because a lot of people are in exactly the same camp. They keep their race day shoes because they cost so much, they keep their race day shoes just for racing. Is that the best way? No. And I'm going to tell you exactly how I implement them and use them in my training so I'm getting the absolute most out of them on race day. Now, I remember when Nike released this shoe and it was an absolute game changer and it got all the other brands guessing because it made you quicker, and carbon plated shoes do make you quicker. There's a carbon plate that runs throughout the shoe, and paired with a very responsive foam, it propels you forward, so makes you faster in the shorter distances, but also gives you energy return. So you get to the latter stages in a marathon and you don't have the same dull ache, you don't have the same fatigue in the legs, which again naturally makes you way faster in that final third of a marathon. And then they released my favorite shoe ever. You guys are often ask me what's my favorite shoe. My favorite shoe is the Next Percent, but I remember before that was released and they said they were going to discontinue the 4%, everyone was worried and they were panic buying the 4% because the 4% was so good. And again, none of the other brands had caught up yet, but they had something, Nike had something that was going to be way better than the 4%. But even still, people were panic buying the 4% because they didn't want to lose that extra speed. And then Nike tried to go even faster and released the Alpha Fly. And this was the original version of the Alpha Fly. In my opinion, and it was personal choice whether you preferred the Next Percent or the Alpha Fly, for me, it never got better than the Next Percent. And the Next Percent still to this day is breaking world records on both the male and female side. Now, it's without doubt that they make you faster. Carbon-plated shoes, together with the right foam, if done in the right way, make you a faster runner, no doubt about it. But why do they make you faster? What are the benefits of carbon-plated shoes? The benefits of the Next Percent are that they propel you forward. So instead of you bouncing up and down, that's called oscillation, it's propelling you forward, which means that you're spending less time bouncing up and down and more time moving forward, which means an increased stride length. It also gives you energy return, so it improves your energy efficiency, which means that in the latter stages, and this is especially true for the marathon, but in a half marathon you will feel it as well, after you've been running for an hour, you've not got the same level of fatigue because you've been getting something from the shoes. And that energy efficiency helps delay fatigue, which is so powerful in the marathon and ultra marathon, but in all of your running. So let's investigate that point. They increase your stride length. So you're able to propel yourself forward using the carbon plate and the foam and have a stronger stride length. So they change slightly the way that you run. Why is it then important to use that shoe whilst you're training and when to use it? So if you're keeping your race day shoes in a box just for race day and for all your other runs, you're using your regular runs, what that means is come race day, you're using your body, your running body in a slightly different way. So your hamstrings are being used in a different way. Your glutes are being used in a different way. You're landing on your quads, which kind of act like a brake and a push-off, using your quads in a different way, and you're using your calves. So if you're using your body in a different way, the longer that race goes on, and as I say, especially for a half marathon, marathon, and ultra marathon, the longer that race goes on, the more fatigued those muscles are going to be because they're being used in an alien way to what you're used to using them. The way to get around this is simple. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to prepare our body with our race day shoes to get used to running in exactly the same way that we will in the race day in our training. Exactly the same as we're practicing with our nutrition, our race day nutrition, so it's no surprise on race day. We're also going to practice with exactly the same way that we're going to run, so we're going to use our race day shoes. And here is where we're going to use them. For the initial part of the training schedule, so if you look at your training schedule, 13 weeks, 11 and a half weeks, it's dedicated training sessions, interval sessions, long runs, tempo runs, and then that last 10 to 14 days is your taper. For the first 2 or 3 weeks, you might be doing long, slow distance as your long run. And therefore, you only use them in the interval session. And for example, if that's 6 times 1 kilometer, warm up in your regular shoes, cool down in your regular shoes, and for the faster running, so 6 kilometers and the recoveries in between, run those in your race day shoes. What that's going to enable you to do is run at the pace that you're trying to run your racing, so run at race pace or faster, but more importantly, get used to the way that those race day shoes, those carbon plated shoes, push you forward, propel you forward. So use it for your intervals. And then when your long runs start to become specific long runs, say week 3, week 4, and you start to add some speed in there, and that might look like, for me, the perfect run is 25 kilometers with the middle 10 kilometers at marathon pace, and that gets progressively longer. So I will use my race day shoes for the entire 25 kilometers, warm up in my regular shoes, cool down in my regular shoes, and then for the 25 kilometers, use my race day shoes. So then I'm accumulating that middle 10 kilometers at marathon pace in exactly the same shoes that I'm going to be used on race day. And add to that the specific race day nutrition, so there's no surprises with both the shoes, the way you're running, and your nutrition come race day. Now here's a cheat code, and it's so important to get right. If you start to use your race day shoes right from week 1 of the specific 13-week plan dedicated towards your marathon or the race that you're preparing for, what that's going to enable you to do is gradually increase the amount of time that you're spending in the race day shoes, so you get used to them very, very gradually. What I mean by that is, if we say week 1 is 6 times a kilometer, then we're using them for 6 kilometers. The second week might be an increase from that, it might be a progression from that, and we're using them for a little bit longer, but still only in the interval session. When we get to week 3, week 4, and we put in specific long runs in there, we're increasing the total volume that we're spending in the race day shoes, and more importantly, in the way that we're running slightly different. Bit more bounce, bit more propulsion moving forward. If we get that right and we take it naturally with the progression of our faster running, of our specific long running, and the total volume, you're laughing. Now, we've also got to consider the other end of the spectrum. There are people who buy the race day shoes, and you might be one of them, and they love them so much that they use them for all their runs. So long runs, their intervals, but also the recovery runs and easy runs are done in super shoes. What that means is, because they're propelling you forward and there's so much energy efficiency there's so much assistance, your muscles are not having to work as hard. What that means in the long term, and you've got to be careful of this, and you probably will have heard people in your running club or circles that have had these problems, what it will lead to is weak hamstrings, weak glutes, and especially weak lower legs. If you don't look after your lower legs by running your other miles in regular shoes and doing your gym work, if you run too much in the race day shoes, you will come unstuck. Now, in summary, you're living in the best possible generation for running shoes. The technology is absolutely mind-blowing, and they will make you faster. But to optimize that gain, you've got to use them in your training, and you've got to specifically put them when you're running fast and when you're running race-specific pace. Super important. If you get that right, you're gold. And before you go, and I've left this purposely right until the end so that you guys watching right until the end have the opportunity to get in there first, from today, every single week, I'll be giving away a t-shirt from the All In Run Club. All you need to do is be subscribed to the channel and leave a comment below, and at the end of the week, I'll draw one winner and I'll send you a t-shirt. Good luck.